Hey, it's Chris. If you're watching this, you're obviously aware that there was another interest rate hike as of October 26th of a half percentage or 50 basis points for prime mortgage rates in Canada. Now, there's a lot to unpack with that and how that affects you in your own personal situation. That's definitely something I would say stop this video right now. If somebody you have questions, give me a call or somebody else that you trust to kind of go through that entire process for to see how it affects you and what all this means to you. But I'm going to take hopefully not more than 5 minutes to kind of explain what's happened over the last say 10 years to can see so we can see where we are and where we actually come from to see where we're going to. And as long as you understand your personal financial situation and what all this means to you, it shouldn't be as scary. So I'm hoping this sheds some light on. Would love your feedback. So let me just go and share my screen. And I'm going to try to make this work. And so hopefully we're looking at this. This is our entire board. It's basically all of the Golden Horseshoe in Niagara. And this is a general overview, but what this shows us is all the data can help us predict where we're going to and understand each market and where your home should be listed if you're selling and then where you're buying. It's two things. If you're listing your home right now and buying, there's a great opportunity for you, much better than if we were in this peak here. And I can go into a little more detail here, but everybody has their own personal situation. There's still great opportunities if we look past the quote unquote scariness of what's happening and realize this, that these are historic normal interest rates. Like, oh my God, these are so high. We've been so used to this level. If you look at the yellow line here of lower interest rates, it's unrealistic to keep it there. So let's go back almost 10 years. And if you look at in January 2016, we had interest rates the exact same, 2.7 for almost 4 years, or just around 4 years before this time. And what happened, if you remember in 2017, right here, we had a supply and demand issue. This was a pent-up demand for homes with a lack of supply. So if you remember back in 2017, it was the first time really we saw the norm of multiple offer situations, people holding properties, holding offers, I'm sorry, for a few days or even a week to get more interest and get potentially market more offers and get above that kind of listing price. And when people are bidding above asking price. Now, this green line again is the average price. So we saw this kind of creeping up and it was kind of a little bit crazy there for a bit. So smart move here by the powers that be in terms of interest rates. If you notice, we saw this sharp decrease. People forget about this. We saw about a 20% decrease in market value over that summer of 2017. But do you notice here that they didn't raise interest rates? What they did first was they introduced a stress test for people getting mortgages. So you can still be approved for that 2.7 or whatever you had, 2.2, but you had to be approved at around 5%. So it took people's ability to purchase down quite a bit, which again dropped the market. Now they also introduced a 15% foreign buyer tax. Doesn't affect 99% of Canadians or Ontarians, I should say. But anytime you put a little bit of confusion or a fear in the market, a confused, scared mind always says no. So we saw the amount of buyers out there dwindle quite a bit, and that was your basic supply and demand. So what they did here was they didn't do anything with the supply. They brought down the demand. So instead of it raising up, they brought it right back down. A lot of people forget about that. So if you see this, we had about a 25% run up. We had about a 20% decrease. Now, for the next few years, it was difficult to sell a home. And if you see here, they did gradual interest rate increases to curb the market. And if you see from, let's just say July 2017 to the beginning of 2020, we saw a pretty normal 3.5 to 4 or 5% growth curve in terms of the appreciation of homes. Now, for single family homes that are being used as dwelling, these are non-income producing properties. They should never be increasing at this level or what we've seen over the last 2 years. So all that being said, we had a good run of 3.95 prime for a long time. Everything was going great until what happened here. You see a quick spike, looks almost exactly like we saw 2017, but we saw a supply and demand issue. The beginning of 2020 was a lot of buyers. People were used to the interest rates. The economy was decent. We saw a lack of supply. So little supply, lots of demand. Saw a really big pop up in that average price. And if you guys remember, March 2020, COVID. So if you see what happens here, regardless of what they did with the interest rates, I'll get to that in 1 second. We saw a sharp decrease in price. Reason being, nobody left their houses, and the people that had to sell, they were taking whatever they could so they could move on because they'd already purchased something in most cases. Now, people realized, oh, COVID isn't shutting down the world, and people aren't, bleeding from the eyes and dying, although it was bad. We went back to normal. So we had this massive supply and demand crunch, or supply crunch, with demand that was really high. And you had these interest rates that basically dropped to historic lows in a month. And they kept it like that for 2 years. So you have a supply and demand issue, and then you also have lowest interest rates possible. What did that do? Supply and demand, you're naturally going to increase that average price because people are bidding above asking price. There's a lot of demand for the little supply, so prices kept creeping up. So that was magnified or exacerbated by the fact that we have the lowest interest rates in history. Why they kept them that low for that long, I can't say. It's not my place to say. However, we saw this craziness continue to happen, and then it peaked here in the end of February, early March 2022, this past March. And then they started to raise interest rates. Well, the correlation to that is, as you know, as interest rates creep up, the buyers' ability to purchase at these higher levels goes down. So even if you have a ton of supply and demand, the ability for them to purchase at these higher price points comes down. So obviously, naturally brings that down. And we can get into a big conversation around supply and demand. We have much more supply than we did before with not as many buyers. So just like we saw this magnified here, we're seeing these prices come crashing down, so to speak. It's not a crash, and I can tell you why in a second. But we saw all those crazy gains basically be wiped off, which is okay because that shouldn't have ever happened in the first place. And if you're holding on to a property long term, this little blip won't mean much. So the reason why I say it's not crash, there is still demand out there. There's a good level of supply. We are in what I would say is a buyer's market. And interest rates, as I said from the top of this, interest rates are at historic norms, not historically high. They're not 18, 20% like they were back in the 80s. I don't think we're going to get there. We are going to see, in my mind, another interest rate hike by the end of the year, and that's just going to bring prices down even more. What does that mean for buyers and sellers? If you are the only person that this would not make sense to purchase for, if the right opportunity was there, or if there's an opportunity, would be someone who's flipping a home looking to sell in the next 6 months. If you are buying your first home, absolutely, my thought would be jumping as soon as you can. Even though the market's coming down a bit, you're going to be putting more into your principal interest than if the interest rates continue to rise. And then over the long term, this graph is going to go back up in terms of growth. It always does. That's the nature of this type of asset. Now, if you are someone who's buying up, here's your best opportunity. Someone who's purchasing, if you were to say, I'm going to sell and buy in the height of this market, my personal opinion, I would much rather be here, because at this height, yeah, you get $1 million for my house, but then you got to buy that same level of percentage increase on the next house that you're buying. If you're buying upwards, that delta, the difference dollar wise, is going to be way more. It just kept spreading and spreading and spreading, because you sell your home here, great dollar value, but then the home you're buying up to is getting further away. So you're in a worse position. Now, what's happening is that if you're buying up, that delta between the when you're selling and what you're buying is actually getting closer. You are in a much better position to have an educated decision, not feel pressured because there's not as much competition. You have conditions that you can put in. There's so much more that's better about this market. Oh, sorry, down here where we are right now than where we were. So I'm hoping this makes a little bit of sense for you guys. And the fear should only be there if you don't know your current financial situation and what the right next move would be. I think when people are scared, there's a greater opportunity for those of us who can look past the unknown, because there's a lot more unknown in my mind in this craziness than there is right now. But it's a different way to look at it. So hopefully this makes sense. And if you took time to listen to this, thank you. Give me a shout if you have any questions whatsoever. And I'm going to stop sharing that. Say thank you very much. Have a great day. Any questions, give us a call, 905-515-1276, or you can reach out to anybody on our team. Cheers.